Content is intended to provide accurate information, however, is not intended as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult a financial, legal, or tax professional for specific information regarding your individual situation. Opinions expressed and provided are for general informational purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security.
Welcome to Game Plan for Retirement with Chris McIntire. McIntire Retirement Services, Northwest Ohio's retirement planning resource.
And welcome into the program. This is your Game Plan for Retirement, Northwestern Ohio savers and investors, your resource for a common sense approach to planning for your financial, your investment, your retirement future. He is president and founder of McIntire Retirement Services, our resource for guidance and perspective to uncomplicate the financial world. Chris McIntire, once again here with us. And Chris, we always appreciate the time and the education that you provide here on the program.
Hey, good morning, Peter. It's always nice to be with everybody here over the weekend, and look forward to talking with you on today's show, buddy.
Well, we got a lot to talk about, Chris. Today, we are going to speak to the planning efforts and the strategies that it takes in order for us to leave an effective legacy behind. And Chris, in order to have a plan for leaving a beneficial legacy, we've got to have a plan that will provide for us during our lifetime. And in order to have long-term goals, we have to have short-term plans as well. So we'll speak to both sides of that and the tools, the strategies to leverage our planning, to leverage our wealth, and to leave a positive legacy and impact on our loved ones and family members.
Yeah, it sounds good, Peter. We, as we work with our current clientele, we help them with all the estate planning process. We help them with some legacy planning, and looking forward to getting into some of the specifics there and sharing what we do with our current clientele also.
Well, Chris, of those that are not yet your clients there at McIntire Retirement Services that come in to speak with you about their planning, would you say that many have a specific plan for leaving an effective legacy behind, or has that fallen down the priority list here over recent decades?
Peter, we've talked many years about people that come into our office and they have kind of hope and a prayer portfolios. And, we say that in jest here, of course, that, hey, they've done a wonderful job of saving and investing, but they haven't done anything specifically on how to pass on a legacy. They just cavalierly say, well, the kids can have whatever's left. They'll have to deal with the taxation issues. And many of them, I mean, the overwhelming majority, have never updated their wills, their powers of attorney, trust, those types of documents for 25, 30 years, even 40 years, if they've, been married that long and did their basic will, back when their kids were youngsters and they were appointing a guardian for children that now have given them grandchildren.
But at McIntire Retirement Services, as you are doing the initial review of the current situation and discussing goals for the future, part of that process, even though that you don't actually design and write the legal documents, you are helping people review and evaluate whether those documents, the important guidance that we provide for our family members, if they are in fact in place and up to date, is one of the things that you help people double check.
Absolutely. I sat through, many Zoom appointments with the estate planning attorneys throughout the course of the year. And I would say probably 20 to 30 of those for our current clientele, just to get their estate planning documents up to date. We just think it's a very important responsibility that we have, to educate the current clientele on how important it is to have these updated documents. And from a personal level, my wife and I deal with that with her father right now, as she is the power of attorney for her dad. And then we're also power of attorney for a dear friend that has a cognitive disorder. And thank goodness they had these documents in place when they were stricken with some issues that, necessitated our taking a bigger role from a personal side. On the professional side, it's very important for us to, make that argument to our clients that, hey, your kids are going to thank you for getting these documents in place, because you're going to need them in times of a crisis. And it's a lot better having it in place than having to go to a judge to get a conservatorship, or a guardianship, if you will.
Well, on a personal level, in my family situation, my wife's mom and her husband recently had COVID. Unfortunately, her husband passed away. She was in the hospital for an extended period of time, Chris, because they didn't have a whole lot of assets or investments. I guess they never felt the need to get those power of attorney documents in place. And we found out that it made things increasingly difficult. So you don't have to have a huge amount of wealth or investments or different accounts everywhere for these documents to be worthwhile for the investment of time to save your family the heartache. And I'm speaking from personal experience here. It would make things much easier for everyone. So if that alone is something that you take away from today's program, fantastic. But we are going to talk about how to create a positive and lasting legacy on today's program with Chris McIntire. And if you've got questions or concerns, if you'd like to go through that review, and specifically this weekend, as we are reflecting on how things can change so quickly in the 20th anniversary of 9/11, how things can happen in a moment that we didn't see coming or plan for. Having these things in place is obviously so important. So give a call. Chris McIntire can help you through this process. He can show you where certain things are necessary. And then when you do have assets and have accumulated some wealth and have different investments and accounts, how to properly position them and what order of operations you should be looking at accessing those things in order to create a good lifetime plan and a positive, lasting legacy for your family. He does offer the opportunity for those that are not yet clients to have a complimentary review and evaluation. And of course, if you are a client of McIntire Retirement Services, reviewing the plan at any point in time is something that Chris does on an ongoing basis. So just a reminder that he is there for you. Pick up the phone and give a call, 800-868-1194. That is 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. And Chris, it is a bit of a balancing act with the concern that so many retirees have today about just not outliving their own assets and the concern of running out of money. If we want to have a legacy goal, we have to have a lifetime plan. If we want to have generational wealth, we have to have an income plan that is durable, dependable, and sustainable. If we've got a long-term goal, we've got to have short-term actions to make that happen. So preparing for ourselves is not a selfish notion. In fact, it's anything but. That is what is going to allow us to provide for others.
It certainly is, because you've taken steps to eliminate a lot of the pitfalls that can be, cause harm to your own retirement plan, if you will. And, that could be anywhere from, not doing things in a tax efficient manner. It could be things in being too conservative or even too aggressive, if you will, with your investment portfolios. And, I think the ideal piece, the planning that people want to do is, I've saved this bulk sum of money. I want to live off of the earnings of this money, ideally, and then be able to pass that on to my children or grandchildren or charities, whoever it may be, later on in retirement. So there are some mechanisms in play, or that you can put in place to, make this transition to, living for yourself versus living for others, or to create that lasting legacy, or to ensure some financial stability for future generations. And for some of you, that might not be, your children. It might be for your grandchildren, because maybe parents are divorced and that type of thing as well. And that can be a devastating matter. So we help many of our clients, structure their estate plan to help whomever they want it to help. And sometimes they need a trust to do that. So we incorporate the estate planning attorneys. Sometimes it's simply updating beneficiary documents so that the money flows to who they want it to. Many times we can include a life insurance policy where we take some pennies and buy some tax-free dollars, and we let the insurance company worry about how long you're going to live. And then we can create an income tax-free transfer of wealth, free of probate, and many of the folks that we deal with, our clientele and the folks that come in from the radio show and our other educational events, Peter, really have very little knowledge on how life insurance really can work effectively for them.
We will talk more about that tool and the different subcategories of life insurance. There are many different types that can serve different purposes, and there are different needs that we have for the protections that life insurance can offer throughout our lifetime. But again, if you would like to review your lifetime plan and your legacy plan, pick up the phone, give Chris McIntire Retirement Services a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. Chris, I sort of liken it to whenever we fly on an airplane and they go over that safety protocol before the flight. The flight attendants always give the standard speech, and they say, if we're in the air and there is turbulence and masks drop from the ceiling, if you are traveling with small children, be sure to secure your own mask before you help those that you are traveling with. And the reasoning behind that is that if we are not doing the things to put ourselves in the most stable position possible, then we're not serving to stabilize those around us. You've had this great checklist that you've offered previously on the program of the 12 questions to answer in order to know that you are ready to retire. And I think that going through that checklist and having answers to those questions, doing that planning review strategy session and making sure that we have addressed each of those 12 topics, that's really the equivalent of making sure our own mask is secure, so to speak, so that we can then begin to help to provide the best and stabilize those around us and provide the support for our loved ones that we care for.
Absolutely. And I have a certain doctor client who's going to ask for that 12-step checklist once again. I say that tongue in cheek here. He always listens to the podcast here, and we've done a great job of assisting and creating some estate planning and whatnot for them. And, just kind of a nice to know that clients take your advice, heed your advice, listen to the podcast, stay up to date with everything. And for those of you that, some of this is new to you, maybe your current broker or advisor is just a wealth accumulator or an investment guru, not an overall retirement planner. And, it's great to have $1 million or $2 million in an IRA account. Okay. What's the strategy to best efficiently use that? And, to pass that on, or, where you can use it the best as well, from Roth conversions to, structuring some taking those taxable dollars and buying tax-free dollars, Peter.
Well, Chris, I've actually had friends of mine that know I host the program with you ask me about some of the resources that you've provided because their parents or grandparents were retiring or planning on transferring some wealth to them, and they wanted to make sure everything was prepared. That Are You Ready to Retire resource is one that I've been asked about several times. So ladies and gentlemen, if you are a current client of McIntire Retirement Services, that is available to you. Make sure that you've checked off all the boxes, but it's a great resource, a one-page sheet to hand to loved ones, to family, to friends, neighbors, to coworkers who are talking about or thinking about retiring. It's something that will certainly provide value. They can go through it very quickly on their own time, or you can go through it very quickly on your own time. If those are your questions, just give a call and request that checklist. Are you ready to retire? 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. Chris, again, there's kind of a balance here. On one hand, we have to check the beneficiaries, have the documents in place, prepare the money to be transferred to the people. But at the same time, the money is important, but it's the values that we have that helped us build that wealth in the first place. And those are also things that we want to pass on to our family. So we have to have these conversations to prepare the people for the money as well. It goes both ways.
Yeah, you're right, Peter, because if you haven't earned the money, it might not mean the same to you as it when you inherit it. And sometimes taxes aren't very important to somebody that is given a windfall. They just think, hey, we won the lottery, we're going to pay the taxes and go on a spending spree, where, like you say, educating who's going to get these funds on the way that you would prefer that they use them, how much time and effort it took for you to accumulate them. And if you don't think they're going to handle money in the right way, then you can, again, leave things to people through a trust that may have mechanisms like spendthrift provisions and specific reasons they can utilize the funds until they hit certain ages. So for example, women typically mature faster than men do at an earlier age. So we often will coach our clients and people that come in to see us on, look, if you're going to leave some money to a grandson and you're kind of concerned about how fast he'll go buy a Corvette, then maybe you leave him a third at age 30, a third at age 35, and another third at age 40, that type of mechanism.
I know where my head was at 18. I was not prepared to inherit any kind of large lump sum. That came at about 25 to 30 to 35, somewhere in there, where I think I could have maturely handled that. But again, Chris, these are why we need to have these conversations ahead of time. We need to think these things through. We need to document our wishes. And in certain cases, we need to set up our financial accounts and the legal protections around them to make sure that our wishes are executed, and find a trustworthy person to act upon those. So all reasons why having that regular planning review is so important. Again, give Chris McIntire a call, 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. You have mentioned taxes a couple times. Chris, how many people would you say are in the category where they say, if I'm leaving money behind, I'm going to let that person deal with the tax situation. It's their problem to deal with along with the dollars that I leave them. And then is that typically the most efficient way to go about transferring wealth?
Peter, it's very typical of someone who does their own income taxes, because they're not really looking at any sort of tax planning, or they may have a, kind of a basic tax preparer, the H&R type situation, not to disparage anybody by any stretch, but, there's a difference between tax planning and income tax preparation on April the 15th. And so those that have, that come into us that, have created some significant wealth, we will, in many cases, pay to have their income taxes done if they meet a certain threshold, or encourage them to utilize and have their CPAs do some Roth conversion analysis on, hey, how much more money could we pull out of an IRA without going into a different income tax bracket? And, overwhelmingly, when we see folks initially, they really have not done any sort of tax planning whatsoever. It's been, hey, this is what we were doing for the last 30 years. Why should we do anything different? And, once we educate them on where income taxes were 30 years ago to where income taxes are today, man, you can see the lights go off and they're like, God, why didn't we start doing this years ago? Why didn't our current advisor tell us we should be looking at Roth conversions? And we are starting to get into Roth conversion season right now as we go into the fourth quarter, kind of October, November, December. We'll do a fair amount of Roth IRA conversions for our current clientele.
Well, again, things that if you are planning proactively, you can have those conversations, you can be prepared for, you can be more efficient with. Give Chris McIntire a call if you would like to have those conversations. If you have maybe missed those conversations, had not done proactive planning with this aspect of your finances, it could be a key portion that costs you more or saves you more. You get to keep more of what you've worked to build and accumulate. A key aspect in planning that Chris McIntire can certainly help you through. Pick up the phone, give a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. And Chris, you can really do side-by-side comparisons, and you do with your clients. They're showing them the tax liability potentially if they simply default to the IRS's plan, because certainly the IRS has a plan to tax each and every dollar at some point in time. We know those RMDs are out there. People must take certain amounts of income out of retirement and tax deferred accounts. If we default to that plan versus if we are proactive and do some strategies ahead of time, what the difference in that ultimate tax bill may be.
You're right, Peter. And, you can look at the trillions of dollars in deficit that that has been done through this coronavirus pandemic, and how will we pay for all of that debt? Through higher taxes. It's not most likely going to be from less government spending, obviously, because they're
That's
more addicted to it
never
than
the solution.
right. Yeah. So, it's going to come from some sort of higher taxes. And remember, in 1986, if you had income of $68,000 and above, you were in a 38% income tax bracket. Today, you'd have to have income above $600,000 to be in a 38% tax bracket, or the equivalent of the 38% tax bracket. So why are you doing now what you were doing 25 years ago, when we're in an entirely different tax world? The Secure Act changed the way that IRAs are distributed. Okay, they have to be emptied within 10 years when they're going to non-spouse beneficiaries. There's no more stretch IRA provisions written into the code past a 10-year time frame. So, you have to adjust with this current legislation.
Have you had to address that? Has that changed the way, Chris, that you have planned with clients there at McIntire Retirement Services when it comes to IRAs and tax deferred accounts? That
Correct.
Secure Act that passed?
Absolutely. Yeah. We've updated some beneficiary documents to give more flexibility, disclaiming capabilities, and it's too technical to go into detail right here. But especially on larger IRA accounts, Roth conversions, and then, the easiest, most efficient way of moving money from a taxable tax deferred account to a tax-free account is to buy some life insurance. You can buy life insurance and create cash value. We do a fair amount of that. I have 2 of those types of policies that I utilize. I can borrow money from my life insurance policy and I don't get a 1099 for it, right? So it doesn't show up on my tax return, where if I take money from a Roth IRA, it still shows up on a 1099. It's not taxable, but it still shows up on a form there. So, I could be subject to different Medicare rules down the road, or, who knows what they can create and dream of. Look at all of the proposed types of legislation that we've been seeing out here. You can't tell me if it's better to have something not show up on your tax form than something show up on your tax form.
Well, Chris, as we are talking about creating legacies, transferring wealth and assets, obviously life insurance is going to be part of that conversation. However, what many people may not be aware of is the benefits that life insurance can have in safeguarding against the potential cost of medical expenses. And if we're talking about creating a legacy, nothing can lay waste to even an abundance of wealth and a sizable net worth quicker than unaddressed potential medical expenses. But today's modern life insurance not only has the benefit of helping to transfer assets efficiently and tax-free, but also can protect our net worth, our assets, and our family from those potential costs and burdens of the cost of care.
Let me share with you what my wife and I have. My wife has a life insurance policy where she can get $10,000 a month of her death benefit tax-free to have someone help take care of her, if like assisted living and a nursing home, on home health care, all of those things. I have 2 of those types of policies with up to $17,000 a month available for myself. Okay. So if your last experience with a life insurance policy was the old universal policies of the 1980s, you're really missing out on a lot of things. If you think that life insurance of the 80s is the same thing as life insurance in the year 2021, you are sadly, unfortunately missing abundance of opportunities to help you solve a number of issues, with one bird, kill 2 birds with 1 stone, however you want to phrase the cliche.
Well, Chris, as we are talking about creating a positive, impactful legacy for our family members, about leaving assets and maximizing what we are able to leave behind. And we're talking about life insurance in particular as part of that. It becomes apparent that there are certain assets that are better to be left behind than others. And it's not just life insurance. There's appreciated stock investment and equities, real estate. Those kind of things can potentially be better to be left behind than, say, like an IRA or a 401k or a tax deferred asset potentially.
Correct. Yeah. And there's also donor advised funds where you can transfer some money. If you had a large IRA, transfer some money into a donor advised fund, get the full tax deduction, and then do a Roth conversion with the same amount, and kind of, just a number of different avenues. Like Peter said, if you've been a very good investor and you've got non-IRA stock, when you pass away under the current legislation, your children or grandchildren are going to inherit that at today's value as the cost basis. So they call that the step up in basis. Now, that is subject to legislative changes, so that could change tomorrow, for example. Highly unlikely, but you never know. Where life insurance is a contract. So, it's gone through the Supreme Court where ex post facto, you can't change things after the fact on a contract. And,
nope. Chris, there could be some opportunities right now that are essentially use it or lose it. They're talking about changing the estate tax limits and dropping those down significantly before we have to start paying that estate tax. There are opportunities that we can gift some assets, do a lifetime gift exemption, get them out of our estate now, but we're not promised to have those opportunities forever. So higher net worth individuals, if you are in that category where those lower limits that they are proposing would impact you, maybe $3 million I've heard them talk about, whereas currently it's a much more significantly higher than that. But if you do fall into that category, you may want to pay attention and absolutely be doing proactive planning now.
No question about it, Peter. Now, the opportunity, I don't know if we're going to call it the opportunity of a lifetime, but for many folks, this is the best opportunity that they have had to be proactive in tax planning versus reactive in tax planning. And reactive is, well, boy, I turned 70 and a half or 72 now, and I've got to take money out of my IRA account. So I'm going to pay the tax on it. I'm going to put it over here and I'm going to pass it on to my kids. That's a forced distribution. That's not a planning strategy by any stretch of the imagination. The idea is to have less money in your IRA at age 72, where they force that distribution on you, tax your Social Security benefit, maybe cause you to pay more in Medicare premiums because of your income. Just all those little loopholes that are in there for retirees. And, it's not the end of the world. We don't mean to talk like, hey, the end of the world is coming, but, we sometimes get passionate about the lost opportunities or the plan of, I'm not going to do anything because I don't quite understand everything. A confused mind always says no. And, the devil I know versus the devil I don't know type mentality, Peter. And, you and I are very passionate about this. We read and live this life of investments and taxation and regulation. And it certainly is a wonderful opportunity right now to take advantage of low income tax rates and start doing some tax planning.
Well, in the world of finance, as much as in any other aspect of our lives, Chris, hindsight is 2020. And we can always look back and say, wow, I wish I would have, I would have, I should have, I didn't do this back then. I wish I had. But with talking about where we are currently and looking at our tax rate environment, this is one of those opportunities where we can see that right now is the time to do this kind of planning. So ladies and gentlemen, if you are a current client of McIntire Retirement Services, you've had these conversations. If you are not or have missed these conversations, certainly give Chris a call and start talking about the proactive opportunities that we have right now to manage taxes, to create the advantaged lifetime financial situation, the plan for your own well-being and sustainable income. and keeping as much as possible of the money that you have saved and worked so hard for, as well as maximizing that estate, that legacy value as well. 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. Chris, there are many among us that are very charitable minded as well. That's another great opportunity. If gifting or giving to a charity or an organization is a priority for us, there are absolutely ways to do that, that can create not only a great legacy and benefit to that organization, but some tax advantages as well.
Sure, and you get the opportunity to see the gifts that you're bestowing while you're alive and healthy, and using some of those charitable remainder trust, or the grant or annuity trust, many different types of trust works that are out there, donor advised funds as well, where you get the full tax deduction and you have the ability to dole the money out as you see fit. And just some nice opportunities out there, and let's hope many of those things stick around for a while, because let's be honest, if you're going to tax the wealthy out of being wealthy, the charities are going to suffer from that, because that's where the funding comes from.
Well, every step in your financial progress takes careful planning, and everybody ultimately leaves some kind of legacy behind. You want to plan for that to be a positive impact on your family and loved ones and those that you care for. Pick up the phone, give Chris McIntire a call, have these conversations proactively. Let's look at the opportunities that we have today in order to maximize not only our lifetime plan, but that plan for leaving that impactful legacy for our loved ones and those that we care for. Pick up the phone, give Chris a call, 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. Chris, we always appreciate the time, the guidance that you provide us here on the program. Great conversation today. Thank you for the insight and the perspective.
Hey, Peter, my pleasure to be with everybody out there today. Stay safe. I know we got rising COVID cases out there, and we'll get through this. So everybody stay safe, and thank you for listening this weekend.
Visit McIntyreRetirementServices.com for many additional valuable resources, including other great episodes of Game Plan for Retirement with Chris McIntire. Be sure to subscribe.
The content of this radio show is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. You are encouraged to seek investment, tax, or legal advice from an independent professional advisor. Any investments and/or investment strategies mentioned involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. Advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, a registered investment advisor.
Fiduciary duty extends solely to investment advisory advice and does not extend to other activities such as insurance or broker-dealer services. Advisory clients are charged a quarterly fee for assets under management, while insurance products pay a commission, which may result in a conflict of interest regarding compensation.
Any comments regarding safe and secure investments and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not refer in any way to securities or investment advisory products. Indexed or fixed annuities are not designed for short-term investments and may be subject to caps, restrictions, fees, and surrender charges as described in the annuity contract.